Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Eating at a Meeting. I am your host, Tracy Stuckrath, and I am excited to be back here every Wednesday, as I am, for Women's History Month, and introduce you to these two lovely ladies to my right or left, whatever way you're looking at me. And I actually met Jen. I don't remember who gave me your name, but I met you on December 30th when I took a one-day trip to Minneapolis to get my miles in with Delta. Thank you, Delta. And we had a great conversation over lunch. And I'm like, I need to have you on my podcast.
Absolutely.
Yep. So Jen Gilhoi and Cate Faulkner met on March 29th, 2022. So a year before I met, or a couple months before I met you. And they co-founded Zero Proof Collective shortly thereafter. Their mission is to promote spaces where non-alcoholic beverages are discussed, thoughtfully crafted, served and sold, and celebrated with acceptance as we bring community together to educate, evolve the culture, and increase revenue in the non-alcoholic industry. And I want to add that non-alcoholic and every other industry as well, because it can add revenue to the bar, the hotel, events.
Yes.
So welcome, ladies.
Thank you. Thank you, Tracy. And thanks for having us today.
You're welcome. Okay, so you met in March of 2022 and almost a year ago. Wow, just a year ago. And you are full steam ahead with Zero Proof Collective. So how did the two of you meet, and what prompted you to start the Zero Proof Collective?
Oh, yeah. Okay, a couple things. We met through Kate's daughter, Callan, and she can fill you in on that. But really what was happening is she had a vision for bringing some of the NA products to the marketplace. And I had recently attended an event that was completely alcohol free. And it was like a speakeasy, like club vibe where no one was drinking. And it occurred to me that that was something that felt very different from feeling othered in spaces where you would go in and order a non-alcoholic and you might be the only person drinking an NA, to this incredible connected experience. So I knew there was something there and wanted to create something in terms of like a collective to bring people together who are passionate about advancing non-alcoholic, the industry, but also just the collaboration. And so backing up to how we met, I'll let you tell that portion.
Oh gosh, it's such a funny story. It's funny to me. They met once on occasion at a networking event, and then again, but both times my daughter responded with, "Oh, you've got to meet my mom." Oh, cool. It's nice to know you, but you got to meet my mom. Like, oh, that sounds great. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we'll table that. And then finally the next time after post-COVID, it was just post-COVID. Yep. And she said, no, you really have to meet my mom. So
it was in January of last year. And it took us a couple months to get a meeting on the calendar.
It was. So we got it on, and we really did start that exact day. It was instant. Oh my gosh, we're so aligned. And I think what really aligned us and what aligns us today is the word inclusivity, because we felt going out personally, being we're both sober, or have abstained from drinking since 2014, and going out, I love to go to mainstream restaurants and bars because my family, that's where we go. We're foodies, and we haven't figured out a word for beverages. Sippers, sippies. I don't know. I can be a sippy.
I don't want a sippy cup. No.
But it just felt like the opposite of inclusive. It's that I'd like, can I have a non-alcoholic cocktail? Can I have a zero proof cocktail? And it's this shoulders drop and this, I'm not going to make money off of this one. And pour the club soda and the wedge of lemon or lime. And I'd say, could I have a pretty glass, please? And they'd push it over, and they'd even do one step worse. They wouldn't charge me for it. It's like I didn't even have, like, oh, that's free. It's nothing. You're nothing here. So it became obvious that there are so many things to use and create zero proof cocktails with. The industry is, the trajectory obviously is very high. The products are achieving some really incredible liquid excellence. And so we thought, oh, okay, here we go. We're going to just see what happens and try to get into different spaces and see if we can do something about increasing NA options everywhere.
And just so everybody knows, NA for everybody is non-alcoholic. Just make sure that it's clear and out there.
Yes.
But okay, so oh, my thought just came out. It went away. But so making sure that it's there, and I never thought about. I actually always appreciated that my drink, or sometimes appreciate that my drink was charged or not charged. I'm like, oh, I don't get charged for that. But you just brought a good point up, Kate. Is that my hair is just being all over today? That it does kind of demean you in a way. You're like, oh, it's not worth charging you my time to charge you for that club soda, which is interesting.
Right.
I think one of the things, because I want to know why your daughter wanted to introduce the two of you, except for the fact that you've both been sober, and so have I, or choose not to drink for a while now. But Jen, you're an event planner, and Kate, you come from it from a different perspective as well. So how did the two of you decide on what Zero Proof Collective? And I guess we need to describe what is Zero Proof Collective.
Yeah, I would say
that was a lot. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. We'll start with where Callan saw an interest or a connection was that we are so aligned, but our skill sets are very different, and we come from different backgrounds. And it's wonderful to collaborate with Kate because we do come at it from so many different angles. I am technically not an event planner. I cover events, so I love the event experience. So what I would say is I am coming at this from the lens of an inclusive experience. And Kate is also coming at it from that lens, but has this incredible background in the science and the low sugar and the content that goes into the beverages. So that also made us a great team. And that's how we came together as Zero Proof Collective. And really, you stated the mission in the beginning, and that's what we're doing. And we're evolving it. Our core kind of thing that we're coming around is collaboration. So what we realized is there's so many barriers. And as we started to uncover how do we do this, we encountered those everywhere. So really the collective is essentially bringing the top people in the Twin Cities right now together to talk about how can we collaborate to come at this from a very top level, including media, and really getting some attention for the work that we all want to do. So we're kind of here to bring that community together.
And when we chatted, Jen, you said you've got bars and restaurants in that collaborative. You've got drinkers, consumers in that collective, as well as the manufacturers or the product companies.
Yeah.
So you're bringing them all together, which is like an advertiser's dream come true.
Yeah. It's been fascinating. And the cross collaboration, we didn't even anticipate necessarily. I mean, we have probably 6 different examples of people that have come together just from meeting, and they're kind of unexpected. There's a sober coach, for example, that wants to partner and host events. And then we have restaurant collaborators that are looking at very specific makers to supply product. And it's just kind of taken off. And we're thinking we have very top level ideas too, based on this. It's not just one-offs. It's like, how can we, create some momentum, and then also be able to, what we say is create like a template for how is this done. So we are looking at every industry from corporate to event host to hospitality to really be a resource to say, here's what we know. And it's not the obvious answer to just like dropping NA products on a menu. It is the experience and the culture and everything that goes into making that.
Well, and Lauren Chitwood from Spiritless, she was on the show 2 months ago, or a month ago, is January, and she's talking it as well. And I think one of the things that she thought was really interesting on some of the menus that she has seen is they're putting asterisk next to the drink, like an old fashioned, and saying, and the asterisk says this can also be made non-alcoholic, right? Instead of creating a whole separate section of non-alcoholic beverages on your menu, which takes up extra space on that piece of paper. Doing that helped take the stigma around, like we just said, we're actually
shattering the stigmas.
Shattering the stigmas, yes.
That brings up a really good point, because in essence, if you're, there are categories here, but if we're discussing a restaurant and bar with a paper specific menu, you are talking about real estate. You're also talking about real estate space behind the bar. So you have to take all of that into consideration when you're adding things. It's the same thing with gluten-free. You know, this is really parallel with gluten-free and vegan. And in the gluten-free, they had to, in celiac, the area, they have to create separate places in the kitchen. So it was very, you know, they had to work at it. It didn't come easily. In this particular case, where event planners and people that own venues and catering companies that are creating non-alcoholic beverage menus, and I like to say NA. I think we'd like to take the acronym NA back, because it does really, it flows off the tongue a little bit easier. For the NA menu, yes, if there isn't enough real estate to appropriately assign, it can be, and some people perceive that as better. There isn't really a better or worse in this category. The better is to offer it, because we know people want it. And I believe that if people had enough confidence, guests had enough confidence to ask the question, because you and I have all discussed the question, no one's asking for it. Well, ask for it, because please have the confidence. No one is going to be offended, and they want to know what you want. They really do. And then this will begin to change, will evolve.
Yeah. Well, and hashtags is ask for NA. So we really are trying to encourage that and what that looks like. And we're, as the collective, also giving people language to do that. Can be a very awkward conversation if not.
Right. So your friend Maria just piped in. You two always give a great interview. So
yeah, thanks for being here.
Just a little shout out now, because I'm using StreamYard as my platform to broadcast this. And so I broadcast it typically to 5 platforms or 6. And then their new application now lets my guests stream it to their platforms as too. So Maria, I'm hoping that's where you're watching it. So great. Thank you for being here. So thanks StreamYard for adding that too. But I do think one of my friends, and I've told this story multiple times, and this happened a decade ago, but we used to work in the automotive industry, and she used to take car dealers out, and she would tip the bartender an extra $20 at the very beginning. She'd get her vodka soda with a lime. And then she said, after this one, just give me the soda with a lime. And the next day she would come to work, and they're all just like sullen and worn out and, you know, hungover. And she was chipper, and she's like, what did I do? She didn't tell her boss she did it. She didn't tell anybody that she did it, because she didn't want that stigmatism around it, but she also didn't want that feeling the next day either.
Yeah. Okay. So, I have an actual story from a bartender about that. He told me that one time, well, many times, but this one experience was so funny because a woman had done that to him, but he went home and his wife said, how'd it go? He goes, well, I made $480 tonight. I had 22 people asking me not to serve them vodka or beverages. Yeah. And so he made all this extra money.
Wow.
Because it was happening all across the bar.
Yeah.
That is hysterical. And my friend, Carolyn just piped in, nice to have options other than seltzer or iced tea. It makes you feel more adult.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's, can I just chime in and say, that's the language that we're trying to use. And when we say elevated, non-alcoholic, it has a very different meaning than the iced tea, the seltzers, the kombuchas, the Red Bulls, what restaurants might typically think of as non-alcoholic offerings. And we're trying to elevate that. So that means something different.
I love the fact that she said adult, because I have heard, you just said earlier before the show, you were saying something to the effect, the New York Times article talked about the Shirley Temple option. And it does, when you aren't offered a beverage of equal value per se, that doesn't look as beautiful and isn't thoughtfully crafted in some way, you do feel like you're sent to the kiddie table at the Thanksgiving, like we all are. Like, oh, go back there, and because you can be with the kids back there. You can't drink or whatever problem you have. It's not that at all. People are choosing this, and this is in fact, I do want to say this before I forget. We've talked about who is driving this industry, who is driving this trajectory that the non-alcoholic beverage industry, it's taken off and it's growing, and we all read about it. Even my neighbors will, oh yeah, I just read about that. That's really interesting. And I think, oh, this is so great. But really what it boils down to is the older Generation Z and the younger millennials are the first group in the history of the world to question their relationship with alcohol and make a conscious decision not to drink on occasion or at all, or whatever their choice is, but usually on occasion. And then they lift each other, they affirm each other's choices through their social media experience.
Yep.
And it's historical. It's a movement. It's really something important. And everyone who has an event needs to really make a conscious effort to make something for, well, first of all, a third of the people don't even drink, period, in the
right.
What about that?
Yeah, right.
Like, they've been navigating this for so long, they must be exhausted.
We are.
Well, and I mentioned it to you that there was a post in a Facebook group where a planner is trying to incorporate non-alcoholic because they've gotten complaints from people who don't drink that they don't want to go to the bar and the only thing offered is water or soda and the slew of alcohol that's showcased on top of the bar, right in the front. And they also don't want their own side bar either, because that's a little bit of a call out, which this now randomly thinks of another question or another thought is that one event planner at a former hotel planner, she said, when you put out the handicap you put out the walkway for the wheelchair user to utilize to get to the event, and that's the only person that is utilizing that walkway, what are you actually calling that person out more, or are you giving them the access? So why not make that same walkway open to everyone?
That walkway. So I don't know what that.
Yeah, right.
I'm always calling so much stuff.
Preferred.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like going to she was using it as going to the beach at their property. I'm like, yeah. So it's the same thing.
Yes.
I feel like I'm yelling.
No, we're getting all excited.
You get a little passionate.
Well, and it does come around to the uniqueness of how we're customizing events, because sometimes we have had a completely non-alcoholic bar across from an alcoholic bar. And that experience is also very interesting, and seeing how people navigate that. So we're open to all different experiences, and certain clients might not all want the same thing. So it's just been interesting to observe.
Well, yeah, and sometimes you don't want to share why, and unfortunately, when you are gluten-free or vegan or you don't drink, people ask questions. Well, why aren't you drinking, right? Or are you pregnant? Especially if you're a woman, right? No, I just choose not to drink. So as women in this industry, and coming at it from this perspective, so you're coming at it from being a woman, but you're also coming at it from being non-drinkers. How is that, impacting the way that you do business? Is it? I mean, because we've got Lauren and right, yes. And then Amanda from Naughty, and so tell me about that.
Well, I think it's community. Women typically are community builders, and we are looking at it from a different lens other than revenue. And it really, I think that's what we have created. I think that's what women have the unique place in creating. And I also look to the pioneers in the sober industry that have told their personal stories. I personally have read, from Holly Whitaker, Quit Like a Woman, to Laura McCown's, like that whole community of sober women that are telling their stories, and then also making it okay to come together in community in different ways, have kind of set the stage for what we want to do. Like I feel empowered by looking at their work and being inspired by that. So as a woman in the industry, I think it's a unique place to be, because a lot of the spaces we want to go in and impact are male dominated. I'll let you take that.
Well, they're all, mostly, a lot of them about my age, and they've been in the business forever. And it's an alcohol laden den. That's the best I can describe it. And it's a challenge. It's a real challenge. It's great because the language they want to hear, and all your listeners who are interested in adding non-alcoholic options to their menu, it makes money. Now, how much money does it make? That it will make more money eventually, but right now it's a healthy alternative. So it's not just sugar, water, and food coloring. It's a better option, and it's beautiful. It's delicious. It pairs with the food, which is where it really stems from we were lucky at one of our biggest restaurants to work with the executive chef, and that was great because we could see how non-alcoholic beverage really end up pairing with the food, and he had all that knowledge versus just mixing together. He was really thinking from a food source, what can we use? And it's going to be more expensive. But they're a very high priced restaurant too, and they spend so much time justifying a $28 hamburger. Like their NA cocktails are now $11. I mean, that's from water or a diet soda. So, and they're selling several hundred of them a week at least. So yes, they make money.
Well, a funny note about that, and because Jen, you told me that story, because when you approached that restaurant, you approached it to the general manager and to the bar manager, I think, and they really didn't want anything to do with it. But then the executive chef said, "Hey, I do."
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm going to say it wasn't that strong that they didn't want anything to do with it. The answer, and I'm sure many of the people listening can relate to this, why?
Right.
What's the purpose? Like, why would you make a drink that looks like a drink when it's not a drink?
Right.
And the people in the industry they don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
And so we, coming from a place of acceptance again, understand that. And what we have found is that in collaborations, it really does take someone that has a personal passion and interest to move these things forward, because there are barriers, so many barriers along the way. In corporate events, for example, you would think that the legal team would be on board saying it's actually better if we're not plying our guests, our employees with alcohol and sending them home. It's like that's a huge barrier. And wow, that we still haven't made the case to move past that, to make a case for offering NA.
We said that to the latest corporate event. We hosted the bar, and I said, it's fascinating because that new study that came out in Canada that states without a doubt, the WHO is it's on their website, no amount of alcohol is good for you. Oh boy, somebody said it. Oh my gosh, what's the repercussions going to be on this? And the fact that as a corporation, when you're relying on people to meet your needs and achieve your bottom line, and then deprive them with alcohol, it's crazy, because one drink can really affect judgment. So it just the science of it. It's not like you have to quit drinking. We're not suggesting that at all. We always say that we're not taking your alcohol away. Please just listen, but offer these options to people, and they loved them. I mean, the smiles of the people. Even a man he's an executive at this company. He works in another country for the company, and he was drinking one with the Tennyson in it, and which is a lovely. I don't know if you've tried that spirit yet, but God, shout out to Graham. Thank you. And he said, "Oh my gosh, I could have really used this last week during that whole workshop. Every night after night." He goes, "My wife and I are exhausted." And yes, he just didn't know that. He's like, "I can't even believe this doesn't have alcohol."
Look at how beautiful that is.
Yeah. That is gorgeous.
It's garnished and batched and made in a very simple process, and we had 3 of them at this corporate event.
And so before we go there, I wanted, your friend on your Facebook feed said Bill
I know, he's a friend from high school.
Oh really? Okay.
Yes, that's 100 years ago. Thank you.
You're not that old. Sorry.
So fun.
So tell me what's in that drink, Jen.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's I crafted it. It's
put it up there again for me.
Pomegranate juice, hibiscus, and a lot of warm spices. The coriander, cardamom, cinnamon, little clove, and some things to add a little viscosity. It's kind of like a mulled wine.
See, this is the perfect thing, because it's every hour of the day is perfect for an NA cup.
Right.
And low in sugar and calories. If we could have like a billboard across the screen, lower in sugar and calories. This is not a it's the strangest phenomena that we have gone, and I'm not going to say the name of the company that makes those icy, brightly colored drinks with a lot of sugar in them. But we've gone from club soda to that as an option in the non-alcoholic zero proof cocktail beverage. And what caused that? I guess they felt like that was the option. But what we are finding when especially that woman that came up to us at the big event where we did downtown said, it was a big corporate event. She said, oh, zero proof cocktails, where have you been all my corporate life? Which one has the least amount of sugar?
Wow. That's amazing. All right. So Carolyn just piped in here again. It's just getting past old habits. Vegan, vegetarian, gluten-free has become accepted. Why not why not the NA?
Absolutely correct. Amen.
I agree. It's still a challenge with some of these properties on those kinds of food, and Carolyn, I was thinking the exact same thing. It's like, why not incorporate the NA drinks into that menu? And Kate, you and I, we were talking about this before the show. I'm like, typically on an event bar, right? You've got the slew of beer and wine and some liquors, depending on what it is, but it is typically it is a cash bar, or it's a ticketed bar. You get 2 drink tickets, or it is a open bar. So how do you, a food and beverage, and I actually went to an event a couple of weeks ago and I'm like, oh, you have a mocktail. Let me have it. And I'm like, what is it? It's Shasta and clear wine.
Say no more. Yeah, we've been down that road. And we shouldn't say names. But
right, true. But it was 2 sodas mixed together.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Right.
But so how does an event, because the event is trying to make the food and beverage minimum, the event planner is trying to make a food and beverage minimum, but to me, it would be a huge opportunity to grow it without having to pay for soda. And so where does a food and beverage director think about making more money in this?
Okay, so I don't do a lot of public events, but I do a lot of private events. And in the last a little over a year, I've done 2 weddings. Both of my daughters have gotten married to lovely people. And one was an out of town. And so we had an NA bar. This was in Beaver Creek, Colorado. And we assigned a price to the non-alcoholic drink. So the prices out there are outrageous. I won't even tell you what the prices are, plus 33% surcharge. But having said that, we assigned a price to it. And it was not $3 a drink. Okay, we've been down that road before at our corporate events. Well, our drinks, we're going to sell we have drink tickets, and they're going to be at, what was that? I think those were at $8 each. And then they said, and yours will be at $3. I'm like, well, no, actually, they should be equal. Ours are actually better. And they actually cost $4 or $5 each to make, if you include the cup, which is a whole nother subject we need to cover before we hang up. If you include that and you include the fresh ingredients, assign a price to it and then deduct accordingly or pay accordingly, but make it a reasonable conversation about how much it actually costs to make it good. Even these ready to drink, the RTDs, can be, for just a can of soda can be $1, but some of these are $4, $5, and $6 each can. Right? So the profit margin is going to be smaller than making, having a bartender make a drink without alcohol. So let's go to your point about old fashioned. If you have several of the spirits that go in there, we could have the old fashioned and the new fashioned, and you just have separate spirits where you're mixing together and you're serving it, and you assign the same price, because the NA spirits are expensive. A lot of these products, and the people you've had on, Lauren and Amanda, they're, especially with the de-alcoholized products, the process begins when the product is finished.
Okay.
So
explain what that means.
Well, it's a bottle of wine. It's a vat of wine. It's a container of wine. Now the alcohol has to be removed.
Okay.
In the alcoholization process. So it's an extra process that's expensive. So the cost it's high, and then our distribution is low. So you've got to, we're on the backs of UPS and FedEx right now. So that's very difficult, but it's more expensive. And right now it's going to be, but it has value. Gluten-free was the same thing when it first started. I was going to ask you, how long do you think, because you're gluten-free yourself and you're dairy-free, how many years did it take to get to this place
Of
that we
acceptance
feel like
in the marketplace.
it just people go gluten-free just
Yeah.
because they feel like it. They feel better.
I mean, for me, I mean, I've been doing this now. I started my company in 2010, so 13 years, and it's still a challenge.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. I mean, I went to an industry event 2 weeks ago, and the only thing
100
gluten-free
years
served
old,
was salad.
With salad.
Oh, with salad.
Yeah.
Yeah, salad. And that was 2 weeks ago.
Salad. Yeah.
Yeah.
About that. Yes.
In a cup. Right.
Yeah.
So but still, but it has come a long way. If you talk to my friend Margaret and a couple of other my celiac friends, the market has changed dramatically, you know, but then there's now, and going back to your point, Jen, a little bit of the conversation about the insurance and the risk about it, right? This is a different risk. You're reducing risk by incorporating non-alcoholic NA drinks into the menu, right? Well, we're going to say, hey, this is gluten-free. Oh no, well, we can't say that's gluten-free because our kitchen's not gluten-free, you know? Oh my God, you know, and so they're saying other terminology, right? To save their rear ends. But it's do the due diligence and provide that safe kitchen.
And there are all, like we were talking about, all different levels of what that looks like for event hosts. I mean, we came up with 6 or more, just categorizing what you could do for a meeting as a host. So there's a lot to be creative with and to work with someone who understands the products and how you would serve them.
Yeah. And on that point, making it part of the experience. We're talking about not being treated as a child or dismissed because you're not drinking. Present it as a normal part of the experience, whether it's the dining experience, the celebratory, the event experience. These are just the options. These are the options. And you pick from this list and have whatever you want with we used to say no judgment. We switched it to acceptance.
Yeah. That's a great point, because I think even if the options are like not elevated in my book, if a server presents it with excitement and, you know, leads with that, I have a lot of, you know, acceptance for that. And that makes me happy. That alone would be okay. I'm good with that because that's just where we're at right now.
Right. Versus saying, oh, by the way, you know, this is non-alcoholic, right?
Oh, oh yes. And calling it out.
That happened at the wedding. I had shipped a whole bunch of the naughty Thompson and Scott sparkling, delicious sparkling Chardonnay out there. And I had the servers serving it to tables just to see their response, and no one even flinched. They just thought they were drinking the regular champagne. It's liquid excellence is so high. But it goes to the point of, yes, they want it. And once they found out it was, a lot of people gravitated toward it because it's weddings and events are long. And to have a good option to be sipping on all evening long.
Yeah, especially for the groom's dinner, because they got kind of a big event the next day.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay. So you're coming up next week. You're going to a convention, right?
Yes.
With the bar and restaurant show and
the bar and restaurant expo in Las Vegas. Yes.
Okay. And there's a whole section on NA, right?
Yes. They're going to have the non-alc chill zone this year. And it's going to be really interesting. It's a presence. It's long overdue, but it's here and it's now, and a lot of people in the industry will be attending as well.
Yeah, and we should say non-alc is non-alcoholic. It's just a new term too.
We should probably post that on the banner. Non-alcoholic NA. Yeah, the NA.
Yep, exactly. And are there a lot of vendors in that section, or is it
sponsors? Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
Yes.
Cool.
Thompson and Scott, Bear. I'm going to forget the other two.
Okay. No, that's great. So how have you, using this power of NA, how are you empowering it? How have you, in the events that you've done since you started, which is just a year ago, how have you seen that empowerment build the communities, you know, through your own collective, but along with the venues restaurants that you visit?
Well, the important thing is that, you know, we've been offering these non-alcoholic options, but we've also been leading the conversation and talking with people and just getting feedback for how they talk about this experience and what they say. I think that's been really reflective of, there's a lot of conversation to be had. There's a lot of, again, barriers that we need to overcome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
okay, so go ahead, Kate.
Well, it's really empowering to be on the phone one night. The executive chef from the restaurant called me and he said, I'm back in the kitchen and I'm looking out across the floor. And he said, I can't tell you how exciting it is to see so many of these zero proof cocktails at the table.
Wow.
And that's really affirming. That felt as good as it gets.
So good.
And the other part is I think we were talking a little bit about how the power of it. We had a woman reach out to us that had quit drinking and she couldn't find any non-alcoholic options at her country club, actually, as the case may be. You would think they would cater to her needs with what she's paying. She and her husband are paying. But no, they said, no, here's your option. And it was a diet soda, which made her cry. So she came over and I literally did a class and taught her how to make these. And she, wrote me a note that said it in her mind, it saved her life. She needed these options to keep, the ebb and flow, the way our lives are woven into other people's lives that drink. And it's just very hard to pull yourself out of such a habit that is really nothing more than a habit. We know all these rules from Atomic Habits and all these, breaking habits and lessons that we know, but it's very difficult in this world because alcohol's everywhere. So for her to be able to just have a place that she's able to bring her own bottle. She brings her own bottles in and they store behind the bar and they make her beverage.
Whatever it takes.
Yeah. She was, but that's big, that it really does give people a life-saving place to be if it's that. And it is for a lot of people. They just don't want the habit anymore. Well, you talk to Lauren and her, that was their thing. They're like, whoa, we can drink every night. Great. But we don't want to anymore. We're just, all the kids they have between them, they got stuff to do.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
I think what's empowering too, building on that, is that my personal story of recovery is rooted in a couple returns to use because I went back into social spaces. So that is exactly what Zero Proof is concerned with, is the relapse rate. And I mean, at one point I had 5 months of sobriety. I was like, I got this. I've done the personal work. But going into those spaces, going into workplace where you're expected to drink is devastating. And that can completely derail people. So it is a life or death scenario for a lot of people. And so it is amazing to come into those spaces and be able to serve those people. And it only takes one person to come up and say, thank you. This is what I needed. So
many of those.
And it'll, keep me on track. That's right. That's why we're doing this.
Well, and kind of going back to, tying that to what you said just now, and way back is when I come into a room and somebody's like, oh my God, I'm eating a steak or I'm eating this. I'm sorry, Tracy. And I'm like, I'm not.
Right.
I'm not vegan, and I'm not judging what you eat. Unless you eat 20 donuts at one time, I might judge you a little bit, but I'm not judging you. I just want to be able to make sure that everybody has an option.
Yes.
To enjoy something. And which reminds me, I told you this story before we went on air, is this one gentleman I was talking about meeting the dietary needs. He's like, okay, well, you've got 1 to 2/3 of these people with dietary needs. What about the rest of us?
Right.
And I'm like, well, can you eat everything that's on the buffet that I'm talking about? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, then what's the problem?
What is the problem? And I'm just going to pull some thoughts from my TED Talk, is that it's an experience of belonging. And for some reason, if you're not participating in what the norm usually is, it feels to that person like they can't. It's not giving them permission to indulge in alcohol and get drunk at the company party, because that's how we engage and interact. It's very.
Well, we this has been a subject for us. This in the very beginning when we first connected back in I guess in June at your big party. We realized early on that question that you talked about, Tracy, of why aren't you drinking,
is really the opposite of what the person who is choosing not to drink is hearing. It's a judgment by the person who is drinking that you're going to judge me for drinking.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's so convoluted.
Yes,
it's hard to follow. I have a little diagram up here. But yes, it really is that. And if as a non-drinker and choosing not to drink, you can possibly let it go and ask for it, this movement will take off.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, and it really is, because it's like, and Derek and I had this conversation at Derek Brown, who was on the show in January. He and I had this conversation at lunch a couple of weeks ago. And it's like, because you feel guilty or whatever, like, oh, I'm doing this, and we don't want to judge you. Carolyn just posted, and Carolyn, I want you to, if you can share that, on this feed, that would be great. That there's going to be booze-free bases at Coachella.
They're going to have
huge.
This is the first time they're going to have NA
Yes.
bars, and they expect it to. Well, of course, it's going to be very successful. This is the point. It is needed. People want it.
Well,
People.
and also it's a shift from what we've seen locally. We have a huge beer event, and the only kind of connotation for not drinking is that you're the designated driver.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
Right. Just that language, and just to say, however, and booze free has kind of a fun attitude toward it. It's perfectly Coachella, and I want to see more of that.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because it is. I'm like, well, and then even I'm like, Derek and I had lunch, and I'm like, all right, I'm having a water, and he got an iced tea. He got a big cup for his iced tea, and I got a cup for my water. And I'm like, come on, people. I'm like, and I refer it to the Dixie size cup, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, that's what you get.
Yes.
Okay, that brings up a really important point. I'm so glad you said this, because what we have found is, as a restaurant owner or general manager or the leadership position, an event planner, someone in charge of implementing this, don't just do a top-down approach. Here's what we got. This is what we're serving. Involve the servers, involve the people who are interacting with the customer, get them, explain to them too. And they probably know this is the thing about this industry. Everyone knows what to do. They just need to be, just like life coaching. You're not really telling a person how to live better. You're just using their own personal wisdom to have an aha moment. But engaging that front line is the critical part of this, because they end up selling the tab would go higher. If it's an event, the tips will be higher. The appreciation, I will guarantee there will be verbal confirmation of what they have just accomplished to make something beautiful, a little bit lower in sugar and calories, that fits right in and looks like you're, partying along. Not that you need to mimic it, but it feels better. It feels like you've been thought about, and it affirms your participation in the event. So, but that frontline piece is critical. They just didn't know. They're just using what was told as the water glass.
Right.
Right.
Don't wash it.
Yeah.
Oh, and I love that as well. And because they're the front facing people to the person placing the order, whether it's at an event or it's in a restaurant, right? And at an event, that server's not going to make more money, but they might get, who knows, they might get a tip somehow, right? But they're going to get that thank you, which when you're running around trying to feed 500 people, that thank you is really appreciated.
Yeah.
And then, but I love the fact that you said it's going to raise the price of the ticket of that for that bar, for that server, and that server is going to get more money out of that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
We've seen it. We have data.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you have data. Good. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So have you gotten any sage advice from your mothers, grandmothers? Because this is Women's History Month. And then one of the reasons I'm highlighting you here is because it is Women's History Month and you're making history, doing what you're doing. But what sage advice have you gotten from women in your life about just life in general, about and what you're doing as well?
I would say mine is less about like words that have been handed down, more about actions, and what my family, in particular my mom and my dear aunt, have done. Aunt Rose is they show up and they support. So I often wonder, where do I get this drive to like just bring community together? And I feel like that is something that they're exceptionally good at. And I've just kind of, being around that my whole life, it just feels like it's translated into this kind of nurturing space that we want to create and community. So I would say that is how, kind of what I've taken from their example and how they live and support the family and support me in everything I do.
That's
And
awesome.
they've helped me too. One time
They
I
have.
had a dolly full of stuff showing up
Yeah.
at her TEDx talk and doing the bar afterward. I'm sure I had 600 pounds, maybe more of stuff. And all of a sudden they appeared.
They
to help
appeared.
me
That's how they are.
push it all in. They're so supportive.
And now your talk, is that coming out now, or is it already out? Or
Any day now. Yes, I
Any
saw
day,
the
okay.
actual edited version early March, and I'm just waiting for it to go live on the International TEDx Talk YouTube any day.
Okay, awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah.
My parents are now deceased. They lived to be 90 ish, and they retired too early. And they retired right at 65, and they proceeded then to live for a long time. They did the dream of moving to Arizona and living in the land of the sun and having that life. But my dad ended up with dementia, and he was a brilliant businessman. And my mom she verbalized it a lot. That was probably not the best choice to make so early on in life. It seemed like they were ready and they wanted to get on with that part of their life. But as we have learned, it's not the best for our bodies and our minds and our sense of self-worth and our value. So it's important to find. And I had just at the point where I was ready to get into this area, COVID hit. And then luckily I was blessed with meeting Jen shortly after that. So at my stage in my life, I'm divorced after a long 40 plus year relationship. And it having some to do with alcohol, I will say, but it motivated me to stay in the game or get in the game and do something where a passion can meet some productivity. So I thank my parents for that, and my mom especially, just for verbalizing that was probably not the very best thing. And she always said, Kate, you can do anything. You're just that person that whatever it is you do. She was she always said that. So I thought, yeah, okay, I'm going to do this. It was a little bit more, I bit off a little bit more than I realized, but has been so rewarding to be in that space of having to keep up with Jen.
Well, not bad. We keep each other energized. Yes.
Yes. So are there any, and I learned this term last week from Tambra, who owns Wanda in Washington, D.C., but sheroes, female heroes. Do you have any of those?
Yes. I'll start just by saying I love the terms like superpower and superheroes. So I have leaned into that. I'm an entrepreneur of 10 years and just looking to one in particular, Elastigirl, which I've always looked to her as like a superhero model in the flexibility and what it takes to be an entrepreneur and do something innovative that a lot of people maybe don't understand, but being also a multitasker and being able to kind of work and move between different worlds and be awesome while doing it. So Elastigirl came to mind when you posed that question. Maybe not what you wanted to hear, but I love the superhero zone because I think we all need a superhero to embody or to relate to.
I love that. No, it's fun.
Mine is more what an older person.
I know what you're going to say. Yeah, I already know.
Well, I love history and I'm a voracious reader, but I find all the first ladies completely fascinating. They're brought into a situation where they have to undergo such incredible scrutiny, yet they have to be completely successful at whatever mission they're choosing to do and present it in a way that connects with people. And it really is a fascinating journey back in history to read about them and their accomplishments all the way back to George and Martha, which I dearly love that part of history a lot. So that to me is probably, if I had a she-hero, they could fall in that category. And especially Betty Ford, just being able to, be vulnerable. And she had problem, and it wasn't cool at the time she was doing that to divulge that information, and she did it anyway. And of course, she got absolute applause for standing up and revealing it. But I do think they fall into the category for me of being motivated and impressed by just everyday women who end up in unique circumstances.
Yes.
And, they navigate them. They
yeah. Oh yeah, they get a lot, just as much as their husbands have done. They get a lot of
for no money.
Yeah.
For no money.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. A lot of scrutiny. Okay, so two more questions. Two more questions. If you could have sit down at a bar and have a non-alcoholic drink with anyone, I think you just answered your question. That question, Kate, was maybe Betty Ford, but if you could have it with anybody dead or alive, who would you have a beverage
I actually have a different person. It's a very standard answer, I realize, but it's Jesus. Because I want to figure out what all the wine was. Was it verjus or was it fermented? Because the justification we get over and over and over is this is fine. It's in the Bible. And I don't know if that's exactly what. Is it 14% alcohol in there?
Right.
So
oh my gosh.
I really would like
hilarious.
to know what exactly. I believe it was not fermented. I believe it was more closer to a grape juice and verjus. But like I said, I would. Any of the disciples, if they're available.
Fascinating. Yes.
I want to know what was
served the
consumed
wine.
at the Last Supper.
Oh my gosh, that's so great. Wow.
What about you, Jen?
After that, well, I think my conversation, the vision that I've had is bringing leaders together in the sober space, women in particular, and hosting a panel or a retreat or a weekend where we can really dive into the work and be able to support each other through all the barriers that we commonly experience, and taking time to do that because we've just been moving so fast. That to me would be just like heaven to be able to bring that kind of collective together.
Awesome. That's very cool. I mean, and you're doing that with the work with the Zero Proof Collective. So I love that. But so continue on with that. Okay. And you both said this word at the very, very beginning, which is inclusion, right? And it's making sure that everybody feels included at the bar. So if you could define it, what does a safe, sustainable, and inclusive experience, food and beverage experience look like to you?
We both have the same answer for this one.
Yeah, it's complex, but it is rooted in what the experience is with the drink that you're actually enjoying, and then just the connectedness and the experience around you. So the inclusivity, I think, is a feeling that I have in a space that is hard to describe, but it comes from all of those things, like from the minute you walk in the door to a social space, to looking at a menu. I mean, these are all the cues that every time I go into a space, I look to see, am I going to feel and be included here? And there are definitely some red flags where you're like, that's not, and so just like, I guess being aware of those and then being able to create experiences on our own. I mean, that's what Zero Proof, we want to say, here's what it looks like. So we have components from the actual product you're consuming to the experience of being served it. And then also talking with people to say, hey, are you noticing an amazing connectedness while you're at this event versus say if you weren't drinking? And I think we have a lot of experience in that, is in approaching that conversation without being othering or having people not feel included. So that conversation piece is also very huge.
Our favorite story is of the 4 women shortly after we rolled out the NA menu at the restaurant, who the server came over, Lori, she's told us the story, and asked the 4 ladies, they had been served water already, and she said, may I get you something to drink? And they said, I mean, physically, it's like a weird answer. No, we'll just have water. Because it was a Tuesday night and they had stuff to do. Maybe they don't drink. I don't even know. It doesn't matter. But the point was, they said, no, we'll just have water. And she said, well, turn the menu over and look on the bottom left there. Here's the Zero Proof cocktail options. They're made especially for you, low in sugar and calories, and they're brand new, and you're just going to love them. They flipped over the menu. They looked at them. They all ordered them. And she said the dynamic at the table changed instantly. They were all now
Wow.
part of the participatory part of the experience, and they had arrived. So how do you explain that in words?
Yeah.
I did the best I
Yeah.
could, but you know, that's a body language thing.
Yeah.
Like now
It's
they're
cute.
more
Yep.
into the moment and
Right.
engaged in their conversation, and they're not just out for another meal with a water.
Right. Yeah. Oh, that's huge. Yeah, that's huge. Awesome. Thank you both very much for what you're doing. I so appreciate it.
And you as well. Thank you
Yes.
for what you're doing.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. So for everybody, as we wrap this up, we were talking to Cate Faulkner and Jen Gilhoi about shattering the stigmas around not drinking and incorporating NA drinks into your bar menu. Ladies, I did put your website up there, but tell them how they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, so our website is a great place to start, zeroproofcollective.com. We have a way you can join the NA movement. So you can opt in there and select, are you a member of the general public who just wants to experience more of these things? And that might be local to the Twin Cities. But the other option is if you are in the industry and want to have conversations and learn about what we're doing, you can opt in under like a business category. So that's how we're engaging with both of those audiences. And then of course, Instagram at Zero Proof Collective, we get a ton of DMs with a lot of ideas, products, and people seeing menus out there. So we love to hear from people that are out experiencing what that looks like in our community.
Awesome. That is very cool. Yeah, and I'll put that scroll back up here, or I'll put it in the chat as well. Well, I for one, as a non-drinker, am very, very excited about it, and I need to do some of these things at home and just get used to drinking them, because I don't make cocktails at home, right? But doing that at home so I can have that.
It's a really important point, that
is.
intentional pathway of
Yeah.
That's the education piece that we're digging into now, that we're going to will be available to talk a little bit more about helping the end users learning how to use it on a regular basis. Because as you know, in the whole retail world, or the economics of it, is you can't just put something out there on a shelf and expect it to be successful. You really have to engage the user on how to use it. And so that is,
and that translates to in venue. Once you figure out what you like at home, you can actually communicate with your server or the manager. Here's what I mean.
Right.
Ask for it.
Ask for it.
Yeah.
Ask for it.
And we say NA cheers is our also our
NA
hashtag.
cheers.
Yes.
All right. So Lynn just piped in. I've never been an alcohol lover and rarely drink, so glad not to be alone anymore.
Oh, you are not alone. There are so many people out there having these thoughts. It's real, and it's honest, and it's coming from a place of vulnerability, but just ask for it. Empower yourself to do that. And things are moving ahead. They will move faster if we get more people behind this.
Awesome. Thanks. So ladies, stick with me for just 1 minute as I say goodbye. Everybody, thank you so much for joining in. This is the Eating at a Meeting podcast. We are here every single Wednesday at 12 o'clock Eastern. This month, we've got a couple of extra episodes for Women's History Month, I should say. Herstory. And join us on the Facebook group, Eating at a Meeting Facebook group. It's free to join. And just a new plug that I'm going to do is that I'm now part of the Nitty Gritties podcast, which is through the Southern Food and Beverage Museum in New Orleans. So check them out as well. I'm one of a couple of different podcasts on that platform. And again, I've been using StreamYard. So thank you, everybody. Until next time, stay safe and eat well. And drink well.
And drink
yes.
well.
And drink well. Yes. All right, ladies, stick with me for a few minutes. Thanks, everybody. See you next